The blackness of space was infinite, and yet, within that vast void, a small glimmer of light flickered. Isabella watched the holographic display before her, fingers running over the cool surface of the control panel. "Are you sure about this?" Victor's voice crackled over the comms, laced with uncertainty. She didn't answer immediately, her eyes fixed on the fluctuating data. The event horizon was close, too close, but there was something compelling about it. "I'm sure," she said finally, her voice cold, unyielding. The ship's engines hummed beneath her feet, a steady pulse that was as much a part of her now as her own heartbeat. "We've come this far. There's no turning back now." Victor's voice came again, more hesitant this time. "You know the risks. We could lose everything." Isabella turned to face the window, her gaze hardening as she looked toward the swirling black mass before them. The singularity, the heart of the black hole, was barely a speck against the cosmos, but it held the power to unravel everything they had worked for. "Everything's already lost, Victor," she said quietly. "This is the only way forward." Victor's voice cracked through the calm of the ship. "This is madness, Isabella. We're too close." His eyes darted between her and the event horizon. She didn't look at him. Her eyes were locked on the glowing data screen, her expression one of quiet resolve. "We've already crossed the line. There's no turning back." She didn't care about the risks anymore. The data spoke for itself. The black hole was their only hope. Victor's face was pale, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. "And if it doesn't work? What then?" Isabella's lips barely curled into a smile, her voice cool and decisive. "Then we go beyond what we know. There's nothing left to fear." The quiet hum of the ship had never felt so oppressive. Isabella remained at the helm, her fingers barely touching the controls as she gazed out into the infinite void. The holographic screen in front of her flickered and shifted, the data streams flowing like an unbroken tide. She knew they were close to something no one had ever seen before. "Victor," she said, her voice breaking the silence, "we're at the threshold." Victor, standing beside her, watched the same data with a growing sense of unease. "I don't like this," he muttered. "The gravity readings are off the charts. We're crossing a boundary we've never even understood." Isabella's gaze stayed fixed, unwavering. "That's the point, Victor. We're going where no one has dared. This is the opportunity of a lifetime." Victor shook his head, his voice barely audible. "And what if this is where everything unravels? What if we're not ready?" Her eyes met his, unblinking. "We're past ready. We've already come too far to turn back." The air around them felt thicker, more charged, as the ship seemed to push forward, inexorably pulled by something unseen. The ship lurched, the sudden shift throwing them both forward. Isabella grabbed the console just in time, her breath sharp as she righted herself. "What was that?" Victor shouted over the sound of alarms blaring. Isabella's eyes darted to the controls, her heart racing as the readings flashed red. "We've entered the edge of the event horizon," she said, her voice tight. "The gravitational forces are destabilizing everything." Victor was breathing heavily, his hands gripping the seat. "We're too close. I told you this was a mistake." Isabella turned to face him, her expression cold but resolute. "We don't have time to debate this, Victor. We're committed now. We either break through or we're lost forever." Victor swallowed, the magnitude of the situation dawning on him. "And if we don't survive it?" Her gaze didn't waver. "Then we'll have seen what no one else could. And that will have to be enough." The ship stabilized, but the silence that followed was more unnerving than the chaos. Isabella slowly exhaled, her fingers lightly tapping against the controls. "We've crossed it," she said quietly, looking at the data. "The event horizon is behind us now. We're inside." Victor stood frozen, his mind still reeling from the weight of their situation. "Inside? Inside what?" Isabella's voice was distant, almost reverent. "I don't know, but we're about to find out." Victor moved closer, looking out the window as the stars outside seemed to warp, bending unnaturally around them. "This isn't just space anymore," he murmured. "We're somewhere else. Something is changing." Isabella nodded slowly, her eyes locked on the ever-shifting patterns. Whatever it is, we're not leaving without answers. Victor stared at her, the fear in his eyes slowly being replaced by the same quiet determination. Then let's see it through. The ship hummed steadily as they approached the edge of the black hole's gravitational pull. Isabella's fingers moved deftly over the control panel, each action precise, her focus never wavering. Victor stood behind her, hands clenched, his nerves taut. "Is this really it? Is this really our only shot?" he asked, his voice edged with disbelief. She didn't answer immediately. Her gaze remained locked on the holographic display, watching the data scroll rapidly, each number flickering like the final countdown to something irreversible. "We're past the point of no return," she said at last, her voice flat, almost detached. "We take this leap, or we're lost in the void forever." Victor's eyes flicked to the display, the readings flashing dangerously close to the critical point. "You really think we can survive this?" Isabella turned, her expression a mix of cold determination and something deeper, something that looked like desperation. "I'm not worried about surviving, Victor. I'm worried about what's waiting on the other side." Victor's lips tightened, but he nodded. "Then let's find out." The ship's engines whined as they edged closer to the event horizon. The pull was palpable now, a force that threatened to crush everything around them. Victor felt it in his chest, the weight of the unknown pressing down on him. "We're almost there," he murmured, eyes darting to the displays as they turned red with warning. Isabella didn't look away from the screens. "We've been here before, Victor, but we never had this much to lose." He ran a hand over his face, anxiety clear in his movements. "And what happens when we cross it? What if we just disappear?" For the first time, Isabella paused, her hands hovering over the controls. She let out a breath, almost imperceptible. "We can't afford to think like that. If we do, we'll be lost before we even begin." She turned to face him, her eyes fierce. "We do this, or we're nothing." Victor swallowed hard, the enormity of the moment settling over him. "Then we do it." The lights of the control room flickered, and the humming of the ship intensified as they crossed the threshold. The event horizon loomed before them, an overwhelming, silent presence that threatened to devour everything. Isabella didn't flinch, even as the ship shook. "We're inside," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. Victor gripped the armrest, his knuckles white. "This is it. This is where it all changes." Isabella's gaze was fixed ahead. "We've changed everything already. This is just the final step." Victor's mind raced, his instincts screaming at him to turn back, but he remained silent. "What do we do now?" Isabella's fingers danced over the controls once more. "Now we let the data do the work. We've come this far. It's too late to stop now." The ship began to break apart the closer they got, pieces of metal creaking and groaning under the pressure. Victor watched as the fabric of space seemed to warp, twisting around them. "This is it," he whispered, fear creeping into his voice. "I can feel it. We're too deep." Isabella didn't answer. She was calm, almost serene. "It's not fear, Victor. It's the unknown. And that's exactly what we're here to discover." Victor's hand hovered over the emergency protocol, his fingers trembling. "We can't undo this. If we go any further." "I know," Isabella interrupted, her voice firm. "But that's why we're here, to break through. There's no turning back now." Victor's breath hitched, but he let his hand fall away from the control. "Then we see it through." The ship lurched violently, and Victor was thrown against the console. The force of the gravitational pull was almost unbearable now. Isabella held herself steady, her eyes narrowed in focus. "We're entering it," she said, voice tight with anticipation. Victor pushed himself up, his breathing labored. "This is madness. We're going to be crushed." "No," Isabella corrected, her hands moving across the controls. "We're not going to be crushed. We're going to make history." Victor looked out the window, seeing the swirling abyss pulling them in. "Is this what you wanted? To be the first to go beyond the event horizon?" Isabella nodded, her resolve unshaken. "It's not just about being the first. It's about knowing what's beyond, and I'm ready to find out." The ship trembled, a low hum vibrating through the walls as they neared the singularity. Isabella's hand was steady as she adjusted the controls, but her mind was racing. Victor, standing behind her, was silent for a long moment. "I don't know what to expect, but I can feel it," he said, his voice strained. "Something's changing." Isabella didn't take her eyes off the data display. "We're past the event horizon. Whatever happens next, we can't stop it." Victor gripped the back of the seat. "And what if we can't handle it? What if we've made a mistake?" She looked at him then, her gaze intense and unwavering. "If we've made a mistake, Victor, we won't know until it's too late. We have to trust the data, trust what we've learned." The ship shuddered again, more violently this time, as the gravitational forces grew stronger. "It's not just the ship that's shaking, is it?" Victor muttered, almost to himself. Isabella didn't respond, her attention consumed by the shifting patterns on the screen. "Whatever's waiting for us is closer than we think." Victor turned toward the window, the vast black hole pulling everything into its depths. "Look at it," he whispered, the awe and fear clear in his voice. "We're inside it now, there's no way back." Isabella approached him slowly, standing beside him. She didn't look at the black hole directly, her focus was on the data. "We never had a way back, Victor. Once we crossed the threshold, everything changed. Now we just see how far this takes us." Victor watched the distorted space, the lines bending and twisting in impossible ways. "It's like reality itself is breaking apart. I thought we'd see something new, but this feels wrong." Isabella's voice was steady. "That's because it's not supposed to be seen, but we're here and we have to understand it, no matter what." She turned away from him, her eyes scanning the readouts on the control panel. "We're getting closer to something. The question is, will we be able to survive it?" The ship groaned as the gravitational forces reached their peak. "This isn't possible," Victor said, his voice trembling. "We're seeing things that shouldn't exist. The laws of physics, they're breaking down." Isabella gritted her teeth, trying to stabilize the ship. "It's not about what's possible anymore. We've crossed into a place where our understanding of reality doesn't apply. We're beyond the event horizon. We have to adapt or we'll be swallowed whole." Victor looked at her, fear and desperation flooding his expression. "But what if we're already too far gone?" She didn't answer him right away, the control panel flashing increasingly erratic warnings. Her fingers flew over the interface, trying to stabilize their trajectory. "We can't afford that kind of thinking now, Victor. We're in it. We just need to hold on and keep pushing forward." Victor let out a shaky breath, his gaze still locked on the strange twisting landscape outside. "Hold on, to what? There's nothing out there anymore." Isabella snapped her gaze to him. "There's always something, we have to believe that." The ship jolted violently, and for a moment, everything went dark. The sudden weightlessness left both of them disoriented. When the lights returned, Isabella immediately went to work, trying to restore the ship's functions. "Is everything operational?" Victor asked, his voice tight with worry. Isabella's fingers flew over the console as the ship's systems rebooted. "It's not the ship we need to worry about right now. It's everything else." Victor looked out the window once more. "What's happening out there?" Isabella's gaze followed his, her eyes narrowed. The black hole now appeared much closer, its edges seeming to pull at the fabric of space itself. "We've entered the event horizon fully. Whatever happens next, we won't have control over it." Victor's heart raced as the ship began to shake again, more violently this time. "What's beyond this, Isabella? What's waiting for us?" Isabella stood still, her face set. "I don't know, but we're about to find out." Suddenly, the ship seemed to stop moving, suspended in space as if time itself had come to a halt. The stars outside flickered erratically, some vanishing altogether, others exploding into unfamiliar colors. Victor couldn't tear his eyes away from the display. Is this it?" he whispered. Isabella didn't respond immediately, her face pale as she studied the data. "I think we've crossed into something else," she said quietly. "This isn't just space anymore. It's something else entirely." Victor turned to her, his voice strained. "But what does it mean? What happens now?" Isabella finally tore her gaze away from the screens. What happens now is up to us. We can't stop this, but we can still control how it ends. Victor swallowed hard, his voice trembling as he spoke. And what, if we can't control it? She locked eyes with him, her voice unwavering. Then we find a way to survive it. The blackness outside the ship was absolute, the stars long since swallowed by the gravity of the event horizon. Isabella sat at the helm, her fingers frozen over the control panel, staring at the screen. Time seemed to stretch endlessly. "We're not supposed to be here," Victor whispered, his voice filled with dread. This is beyond anything we ever prepared for." Isabella didn't respond right away. Her eyes flickered across the data, the numbers no longer making sense. "I know," she said softly. "But we've crossed the threshold. We don't get to turn back." Victor turned to her, desperation in his eyes. "You keep saying that. But what does it mean? We're trapped in here. There's no way out." She stood abruptly, her hands gripping the edge of the console. "We don't need to get out, Victor. We need to survive. Whatever happens next, we face it together." Victor looked at her, uncertainty clouding his features. "And if we can't survive?" Isabella's gaze hardened. "Then we'll find a way to make sure our work matters, even if we don't make it out." Victor watched the stars beyond the window warping and twisting, the pull of the black hole distorting reality itself. "I don't understand," he muttered, almost to himself. "Is this what we came here for? To watch everything break apart?" Isabella didn't look at him. Her attention was entirely on the readings that blinked erratically on the control panel. "We're not watching everything break apart," she replied, her voice steady. "We're witnessing the beginning of something new, something no one has seen before." Victor shook his head, his disbelief rising. "I don't see anything new. I just see everything collapsing. The space, the stars, it's all warping." She finally turned to him, her expression firm. "That's exactly the point, Victor. Space, time, everything we know is breaking apart. But that's where the answers lie. We just need to hold on a little longer." Victor swallowed, his mind racing. And what if we can't hold on? The ship shuddered again, more violently this time, and Victor's breath caught in his throat as a strange, eerie hum filled the air. Isabella turned swiftly to the controls, her face pale. "We're entering a new space," she said, her voice sharp with realization. "Time isn't moving the way it should." Victor looked at her, his panic rising. "What do you mean, time isn't moving right?" Isabella's hands were a blur over the panel, but her eyes never left the screens. "It's like we've stepped outside of the flow of time, like we're caught in a moment that's both infinite and instantaneous at the same time." Victor's head spun as he tried to understand. Is that even possible? She met his gaze for the first time in what felt like ages, her voice steady. "I don't know. But we're going to find out. Whatever this is, we're inside it now. And I have to know what's on the other side." The hum in the ship grew louder, vibrating through the walls as the black hole's pull intensified. Victor staggered slightly, grabbing the nearest support. "Is this it? Are we losing control?" he asked, his voice strained. Isabella's face was stone cold, her focus unwavering. "We're not losing control. We're evolving." Victor stumbled towards her, his voice breaking through the thick tension. "Evolving into what? We're moving at the speed of light. What's happening to us?" Isabella finally turned to face him, her voice firm. "We're being exposed to something new. Something that can change everything. We're inside the singularity now, Victor. We can't stop it. We can only experience it." Victor's eyes widened, realization dawning. "And what if we don't survive this?" Isabella locked eyes with him. "Then we die knowing we saw the impossible. And that's all anyone could ever hope for." The ship finally stopped trembling, but the atmosphere inside was thick with tension. "Is this what you wanted, Isabella?" Victor asked, his voice soft, but filled with something like awe. "To break through, to see what's beyond." Isabella remained silent for a moment, the only sound the low hum of the ship systems as they leveled off. "It's not what I wanted," she replied. "It's what we needed." She paused, her eyes scanning the data again, though it no longer made sense. It's what we all need, to break the boundaries and understand what's beyond. Victor shook his head slowly, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. But we don't understand, Isabella, not yet. She met his gaze, her eyes filled with quiet determination. Maybe not, but we will. And this is only the beginning. The gravitational pull seemed to ease, but the strange hum inside the ship was louder than ever. The lights flickered, casting long shadows across the control room. Isabella was quiet, staring at the data streams that no longer made sense. Victor watched her, his eyes filled with uncertainty. "Isabella," he said, his voice hesitant. "What's happening to us?" She didn't respond right away. The data on the screens danced in impossible patterns, colors and numbers clashing in ways that defied all understanding. "We're in a place no one has ever been," she said at last, her voice quiet. "The black hole isn't just a physical space. It's more like a gateway to something else." Victor shook his head, still struggling to comprehend. "A gateway to what?" She finally looked at him, her eyes filled with a mix of awe and fear. "I don't know yet. But we're about to find out." The space outside the ship had shifted. No longer were there stars in the void. Instead, a strange pulsing light radiated from the heart of the black hole. It was unlike anything Victor had ever seen. Is this real?" he asked, his voice shaky. Isabella walked toward the window, her eyes locked on the ever-changing patterns outside. "It's as real as we are," she replied, her voice distant, almost mesmerized. "But it's not a reality we can understand yet." Victor took a deep breath. "We've crossed a line, Isabella. We can't turn back. What if we've made the wrong choice?" She didn't answer immediately. She stared into the strange light outside, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if this is the only choice we ever had?" The ship seemed to pulse with energy, the walls vibrating under the pressure of the unknown. "This is beyond anything we could have predicted," Victor said, fear creeping into his voice. "We've crossed into something else. We don't belong here." Isabella was focused, as if the words were nothing more than a distant echo. "We never belonged anywhere else, Victor. This is where we were meant to be." Victor shook his head, trying to stay grounded. "You can't mean that. We're—" He stopped, his words choking off as the walls of the ship groaned under the strain. Isabella's hand rested lightly on the console. "What we're seeing, Victor, is the beginning of something unimaginable. We have no choice now but to see it through." Victor gripped the armrest, his breath shallow as the ship continued to warp through the strange space. I can't keep doing this," he said, the words escaping in a rush. "What's on the other side? What are we doing here?" Isabella turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "What's on the other side is exactly what we're here to find out. We've come this far, Victor. You can't back out now." Victor's face twisted with frustration. "I'm not backing out. I'm asking if we're ready for whatever comes next." Her gaze softened just for a moment. "None of us are ever ready for the unknown, but we can either face it or be lost in it forever." Victor swallowed, his fear still palpable, but he nodded slowly. "I don't know if I can do this, but I'll try." The ship's alarm suddenly blared, the lights flashing in rapid succession as the data readings spiked. "This is it," Isabella said, her voice tight with urgency. "We're about to cross over to something new." Victor's eyes were wide, his fear now mixed with awe. "What happens if we go too far?" Isabella's gaze was steely. "We won't go too far, but we won't know where the line is until we've crossed it." The ship lurched again, and this time, the hum outside intensified. It was as if the very fabric of space was stretching to meet them. "Hold on," Isabella said firmly, her hand gripping the console as the ship pushed forward. "We're about to see the impossible." Victor stood still, watching the strange light grow ever closer. "And what happens when we see it?" Isabella didn't look at him, her focus solely on the unknown. "Then we know it's real." The ship's interior was a blur of flashing lights and strange, incomprehensible sounds. Time, space, and reality all seemed to bend and stretch. Victor gripped the seat, his knuckles white. "This is it," he gasped, his voice filled with awe and terror. "We're outside of everything. Nothing makes sense anymore." Isabella stood at the console, her face expressionless. "We're exactly where we need to be," she replied, her voice low but steady. She tapped a series of commands into the control panel, watching as the ship responded erratically. "Whatever this is, it's trying to communicate with us. It's showing us something." Victor looked at her, eyes wide. "You think we can understand it?" She met his gaze, her expression hardening. "We'll have to. There's no going back now." The strange light outside the ship intensified, filling the cockpit with an eerie, unnatural glow. Victor couldn't tear his eyes away from the view. "It's like everything's folding in on itself," he whispered. "This is too much." Isabella didn't look up. "It's not too much, Victor. It's everything we've been searching for. This is the intersection of all things, the beginning and the end." Victor's voice trembled. "But what happens if we can't comprehend it? What if we lose ourselves in this?" She finally turned to face him, her eyes cold and resolute. "Then we do what we've always done. We adapt. We make sense of it." She stepped closer to him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "We face it together." Suddenly, the ship lurched, a violent jolt that threw them both to the floor. The lights flickered and the ship's systems went haywire. Is this what it feels like to be pulled apart?" Victor gasped, his chest tight. Isabella scrambled to her feet, her voice urgent. "We're crossing the threshold, Victor. The event horizon has taken us fully inside. We're no longer in control of the ship, or of time." Victor looked around, his panic mounting. "Then, what are we supposed to do?" Isabella's hand flew across the console, her face etched with focus. "We're going to have to ride it out. Whatever happens next, we have no choice but to face it." Victor nodded slowly, his fear now tempered with a grim resolve. "Then let's do it." The ship stabilized, but the strange phenomena outside continued to escalate. The light outside was no longer just light, it was something else. A wave of energy rippled through space, warping everything. "What is that?" Victor whispered, his eyes wide with disbelief. Isabella didn't respond at first. Her gaze was locked on the view. "It's the fabric of reality itself," she said softly. "This is what happens when you breach the boundaries of known space. Time, matter, everything is fluid here." Victor turned to her, his voice shaky. "Are we supposed to just exist in this? What are we supposed to do?" Isabella's voice was calm. "We adapt. That's all we can do. This is the price we pay for the knowledge we seek." The ship's systems began to stabilize again, the lights returning to their usual hum. But something had changed. The atmosphere was different. The ship had passed through something, and it felt as if they were no longer in the same universe. Victor looked at Isabella, his face pale but filled with a new understanding. "What now?" he asked quietly. Isabella turned to him, a hint of a smile on her lips. "Now we see the truth. The event horizon wasn't just a barrier. It's a doorway." Victor shook his head, disbelief still thick in his voice. "A doorway to what?" Isabella's eyes gleamed with anticipation. "To everything we've ever wondered about, and so much more." She stepped forward, her fingers moving over the controls once more, her voice steady. "We're about to see the other side of existence itself." The ship's hum grew louder, as if the very fabric of the vessel was vibrating with the energy coursing through the space around them. Isabella stood at the console, her hands steady despite the chaos unfolding outside. "This is it," she said, her voice low, almost reverent. "We've passed the event horizon, and now we're inside something that shouldn't exist." Victor watched the swirling chaos outside the window, his voice shaking. "I don't know how much longer we can last in this. We're too deep. There's no going back." Isabella didn't look at him. Her gaze was fixed on the strange flickering data that had become their only guide. "There's no going back, but that's the point. We have to move forward. We need to understand what's beyond this." Victor took a step toward her, his expression torn. "And if we don't survive it?" Isabella finally turned to face him, her eyes fierce. "Then we die knowing we saw what no one else has, and that will be enough. The ship's trajectory began to shift. The strange, otherworldly energy outside the window intensified, its pulsing rhythm matching the ship's now erratic movements. "What is that?" Victor whispered, his voice barely audible. "Is it trying to communicate with us?" Isabella's gaze didn't leave the display. "It's not communication. It's a pattern, something beyond our comprehension." She swallowed hard, her voice more uncertain than she wanted it to be. "But we're starting to see it, piece by piece." Victor stepped closer, his breath shallow. "And what happens when we understand it? What happens when we know what's beyond the horizon?" Isabella paused, her hands stilling on the controls. "We'll have to face the truth, Victor, whatever that truth is." The ship lurched violently once more, throwing both of them to the floor. Victor scrambled to his feet, his heart racing as the walls groaned under the strain. "This is too much," he gasped, his voice hoarse. "We can't withstand this kind of pressure." Isabella, however, was already back at the controls, her face determined as she inputted new commands. "We're almost there, Victor," she said, her voice unwavering. "Just a little longer." Victor looked at her, his mind racing. "What happens when we get there? What's on the other side of this?" Isabella's fingers moved faster across the console. "Whatever it is, it's going to change everything." The ship steadied again, but the strange light outside had now completely engulfed the view. The space around them seemed to bend in impossible ways. Victor could feel the air in the room shift, as if the very atmosphere had changed. "This is it," he whispered, awe and terror filling his voice. "We've crossed over. There's no going back." Isabella stood silent for a moment, her face lit by the strange glow outside. "There never was a way back," she said softly, her eyes fixed on the distortion outside the ship. "We crossed a line the moment we decided to come here. Now, we see what's on the other side." Victor's voice was thick with emotion. "And if we don't survive this?" Isabella turned to him, her face calm, but her eyes betraying the depth of what they had done. "Then we'll have made the greatest discovery in human history, and that will be enough." The ship began to stabilize, the swirling chaos outside finally calming, but the unknown light still pulsed around them. For a moment, everything seemed eerily still. Victor stared out the window, his voice barely audible. "What now?" Isabella took a deep breath, the tension in her body easing, but not entirely gone. "Now, we find out what lies beyond." Victor turned to her, his voice full of both fear and awe. "And what if it's too much for us to understand? What if it's too alien?" Isabella's eyes softened, but her determination remained. "We won't know until we face it, but that's the only choice we have." Victor nodded slowly, his hand gripping the edge of the console. "Then we face it." Isabella gave him a brief, tight smile. "Together." "Yeah."